we're looking to set up a little medical clinic. And this governor says, go and see Cecil Rhodes. And he wrote a letter, and Cecil Rhodes says, go in this direction. And then he says, go as many miles as you want to in one direction, and as many miles as you want in the other direction. And the chap did it, and he said, whatever mileage that was, you can have that as your land, free of charge. And that's how the work started in Rhodesia. Pioneer missionary work was not finished in America. After the Civil War, little was done for the blacks of the South. Ellen White made numerous appeals for this needy field. Then in 1894, his son James Edson built a missionary boat, the Morning Star. Now, I just want to bring a couple of points here. Is Sister White and the pioneers come under a lot of attack for being racist. A lot of ideas are coming out today that the pioneers were racist and Ellen White was racist. She did much, and she did as much as she could for the work of the blacks in the South. She put money into it, she encouraged work, she encouraged her brothers and sisters to start work there. Sister White was not racist. Now her son Edson, she had real problems with her son Edson. Edson was in and out of the faith. And for some reason Edson just could not establish himself. And one day Ellen White, she had a dream about Edson. She saw Edson on the beach, and he decided to go for a swim. And this particular beach was very dangerous. The sea had an undertow current. And Ellen White was quite far behind, and there was lots of people there. And as she saw Edson going into the water, it dawned on her that there was the undertow, and that Edson could be lost. And she screamed and shouted, Edson, Edson, the undertow, the undertow. And as Edson was swimming, for an instant he almost got caught under the undertow, and Edson could have died. And then finally Edson sees what Ellen White's shouting about, and he swims back to the shore. And she related this to Edson. And after that vision, Edson realized that he was on the brink of being a lost man. And so he came back into the faith, and he decided to start this work in the South. And he bought this boat, the Morning Star, and he did a tremendous evangelistic work amongst the blacks. He sailed up and down the Mississippi River, and with his associates forged ahead against tremendous obstacles. Before too long, they had established 50 mission schools. They also had a printing press, the Morning Star, which became the forerunner of the Southern Publishing Association in Nashville, Tennessee. They had a special Sabbath school collection for the work in the South. And what happened was they put an appeal out, and thousands of dollars was raised for the work in the South. And a portion of this money was to go to the Morning Star. But do you know what happened to the money? The General Conference got into some debt. And they took the Sabbath school money and they put it into the debt. So they put it into something that was not what it was designed for. And so basically Edson got nothing. He complained to Ellen White, and Ellen White made stern appeals to the conference that what you've done is you've stolen money. You have taken money not given for what you've used it for. And so they had to withdraw the money, and they had to use the funds appropriately. And that's an important lesson. If God has given you something, money to use, you've got to use it for that purpose. In 1900, Ellen White returned to America, leaving a strong work in Australia. By the way, when Ellen White came back to America, this time it's because the Lord was pushing her to go back to America. She could see, and the Lord was showing her all kinds of things were going on, and that she needed to go back to help and strengthen the work and get it back on track. Her home for the last few years of life was at Elmshaven, near the St. Helena Health Center in Northern California. From this place, for 15 years, the rapidly growing Seventhday Adventist Church received messages of encouragement, warning and guidance, as well as 9 additional books which were written at her home. The year 1901 was a momentous one for Seventhday Adventists. The General Conference met at Battle Creek, where Ellen White addressed the delegates several times. She wrote, I think it's in the testimonies, she wrote an article, and it was called What Could Have Been. I don't know if you're ever familiar with that. If you've got the Ellen White said, you look it up, the title, What Could Have Been, and she describes that had the revival and reformation taken place at this 1901 conference, something great and wonderful could have happened. She pointed out that the church faced a crucial period ahead, a time for reorganization and decentralization. She warned against the spiritual decline among the leaders, and that if these leaders failed to follow God's counsel, He would speak in a way impossible to ignore. There's a story that goes, there was a man called Elder Andreasen, and Elder Andreasen, he became a Seventhday Adventist, and he trained to be a pastor. At the college he trained to be a pastor, there used to be a group of pastors that would regularly meet, and these pastors would have discussions about Ellen White. And the majority of the discussions would go along basically how Ellen White's a bit retarded, a bit mental. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's a bit mixed up. And since James White's died, she hasn't really got it together. And this is how Andreasen came into this environment. He's thinking, oh, who is this Ellen White? Yeah, maybe she's a bit ditty. Just to call her a bit an old ditty. And then he came across the book Desire of Ages, and as he read the Desire of Ages, he said, this book is powerful. This woman couldn't have written this book. It's impossible. If this woman really wrote this book, then she is an inspired prophet. But she couldn't have written this book. So he went out on a mission. He went to Elmshaven, and he went to Ellen White for a personal interview, and says, look, can I look at your original documents? She said, you can have free access to the vaults. You can do what you like in the vaults. And he got the published copy of Desire of Ages, and he went to her original handwriting on Desire of Ages. And he saw word for word, except for some spelling mistakes and grammatical changes, that she wrote Desire of Ages. And from that point on, he became convinced that this woman was the prophet of God. The church was reorganized, but not how and thoroughly how it should have been. A.G. Daniels was chosen to head the world work, and soon 500 men around the world shared the responsibilities previously carried by only 13 men in Battle Creek. The way was now opening for great advances. A.G. Daniels, by the way, he started off well. He was like an apprentice for James White. But as the years grew on, A.G. Daniels took strong position against Sister White. He rejected a number of her counsels. One of the issues was on vegetarian lifestyle. A.G. Daniels was an avid meat eater, and he was blocking and causing a lot of resistance to the health and temperance movement. And he caused a lot of stumbling blocks. A.G. Daniels also caused a lot of stumbling blocks with Madison College. He caused a lot of problems. A.G. Daniels, unfortunately, he died of cancer, and a lot of it was to do with his diet. A.G. Daniels was one who did not choose to listen, sad to say. However, in two of our great institutions in Battle Creek, the Sanitarium and the Review and Herald Publishing House, things went on as usual. Clear messages of warning of needed changes went unheeded, and suddenly events began to speak for themselves. You see, if we reject the counsel, things will happen. On the night of February 18th, 1902, the cry of fire, fire was heard, and the Battle Creek Sanitarium burned to the ground. What was amazing, not one life was lost. Before the year closed, the Review and Herald also went up in flames. Witnesses said it seemed that the whole building burst into flames at once, and firemen were unable to stop it. Some say that Adventist fires are the worst fires ever, and the hottest ones too. When the news of the fires reached Ellen White at Elmshaven, California, she claimed no surprise. She said she had seen in vision a sword of fire held over these buildings, yet still she wept for what these great institutions had meant. How she wished that the warnings had been obeyed. When asked a few months later at the 1903 General Conference